Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Conservative MPs have triggered a vote of no confidence in Theresa May, plunging the Brexit process into chaos as Tory colleagues indicated they no longer had faith in the Prime Minister to deliver the deal. Brady, the chair of the parliamentary group of the Conservative Party in the UK House of Commons, has received at least 48 letters from Conservative MPs calling for a vote of no confidence in May. Under party rules, a consent is triggered if 15% of Conservative MPs write to the chair of the committee of Tory backbenchers. A ballot will be held later this evening between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. UK time, with votes counted immediately afterwards, and an announcement will be made as soon as possible. Media reports in the UK said that an announcement could be made by 10 p.m. UK time. If she is effectively sacked after the ballot, a contest could take up to 6 weeks to complete. On Tuesday night, ministers warned that such a successful challenge would mean that Article 50 might have to be suspended. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Brexit situation and its implications. Joining me on the program today are Neeraj Srivastava, former ambassador, Sriram Cholia, Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs, and Sheetal Sharma, Assistant Professor, Centre for European Studies, JNU. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Sheetal Sharma, I'd like to begin the program with you. Clearly, trouble is brewing for Theresa May in the UK and in Europe as well.
Frank, the day these people voted for Brexit, they had shot themselves in the foot. Starting with the emotional sentiment on the basis of which people voted for leaving the EU, they had not imagined that someday they'll be in this kind of situation. Now the situation has come to a point where there is no way out right now, what we see. What happens in the evening is also going to have diverse kind of implications for UK and for the EU as well. Now what will happen? Now we'll not talk about what has happened in the last 2 years since the vote has been done, but now let's imagine a situation what is going to happen in the evening. Now Theresa May is being voted out by two lobbies, the extreme hardcore Brexiters and those who say that they wanted to remain. Because the deal that she has signed with the EU or she is trying to pass in the parliament is something which is seen as a compromise with the European Union, because it retains many of the financial commitments for next 8 years or even up to next 30 years in which pensions are going to be paid to the EU officials. Then it also makes it a part of some of the custom union regulations, checks and all these things. It also binds UK with some of the regulatory laws, environmental laws, labor laws. So what is the change? The Remain people say that if you are not going to change much of these things, then why do you want to go out? The Exiters say that it is a compromise and you are leaving many of the things, sovereignty under the EU as well. So they do not trust both the extreme ends. Now what has happened, she is thinking that she can strike a best deal for UK, because if there is a deal, then also UK is going to nosedive in terms of economic readjustment, restructuring, and even if there is no deal, then it would be a disaster for UK. So in such a situation, you think that the leader is going to be replaced and then something good will emerge. But what will happen if she leaves? They have to elect a leader new, and the Article 50 already has been triggered. So it leaves a 2-year scope for you, 29th March 2019. Now what will happen? The new leader will not have enough time to negotiate many of the things with the European Union. European Union has already taken a hard stand that they are not going to relent upon giving a soft Brexit to these people. Otherwise it will trigger a string of exits in EU, which is already in turmoil. So the situation is too complex on this chessboard, economic and political chessboard, where anything, whatever happens in the evening is going to have diverse kind of implication. Now, if this does not happen, they have to revoke Article 50.
Absolutely.
That is, either they have to extend the period or they have to revoke it altogether.
We'll come to that in just a bit, probably later on in the program. Let's talk about the vote of confidence first. Sriram Cholia, which way do you think that this vote is really going to go? What is Theresa May up against?
I think she's caught in the middle of a maelstrom, from all sides and being buffeted both within her party, also from the opposition Labour Party, which has been gaining ground electorally, and the general public. I think her major problem has been, as a politician, Prime Minister May has not been able to, develop a kind of core group of followers within her own party. And so, in a way, her style of communication, people say she's been very wooden and not very effective and, very aloof. And last year, she called for early elections, snap elections, and it was a big blunder where the Conservative Party almost lost it, but barely scraped through with a coalition and formed another government. So she's been seen as, ineffective as a politician. But I think what is going for her, and which is why she has survived for almost 2 years through this, very, very tumultuous and messy process, is because nobody else, it's like a poisoned chalice to pass it on. And if somebody else becomes the prime minister now, they have a mandate, the election they won or nearly lost, as I said, was in 2017. So until 2021-22, there are no general elections due as per the current parliament's makeup. So in other words, the new prime minister, if there is one that emerges, suppose she loses, I think will inherit much of the mess. And it all, if you go back historically, it started with David Cameron, because he made the first big blunder of calling for a referendum on something so sensitive as membership in the EU. It was not even required. He thought that he could outflank his opponents within the Conservative Party, and he put the entire nation's fate on the chopping block. And now they're paying the price for it. I feel sympathetic to Theresa May, because she's a principled woman. She's not power hungry. She's not desperate to somehow cling on, but she feels like she has been given a mandate that she must fulfill, and that she's playing a historical role at a very critical juncture.
Right.
So I think she's not been able to convince a lot of the blocs within her party, and opinion polls are suggesting, that she has no confidence in the parliament as a whole. So, and she's hanging by a thin wire with a unionist party from the Northern Ireland, which doesn't want some part of the agreement she has dealt with the Europeans. And I think even with the Europeans, they're fed up, because the rest of the EU has painstakingly come to this kind of a deal with her for months and months and months of negotiations. And now all of this could be thrown out of the window. So the UK's credibility is at an all-time low. And
Absolutely.
Theresa May is simply a symbol of this decline and failure.
Right. Ambassador Neeraj Srivastava, I'd like to come to you now. Professor Chaulia brought up the name of David Cameron. Of course, we've seen one prime minister lose his job as a result of Brexit. Is another one going down that way?
Well, it's quite possible. And I think that this move by the backbencher Tories has taken place on the basis of their own assessment or perception that Theresa May doesn't have enough support in Parliament. And in fact, the vote in Parliament on Brexit was supposed to have taken place yesterday. The fact that she postponed it till, say, January 21 is the last date. The fact that she postponed it and is traveling to different capitals in Europe means that she's still trying to salvage, the deal so that she can get it approved by Parliament. But I suspect that, to me, to tell you the truth, I don't know what these people intend to gain by this, replacing Theresa May, because the person who takes over from her will have the same task in front of him to get the Parliament to approve the Brexit deal. And I don't see how, just a change in the Tory leadership would suddenly, get the required majority in Parliament to approve this particular deal. So this is, this is some internal politics of the Tory party.
Absolutely, and it seems like it's playing out on
which is
on
playing
the scale,
itself out, but which does not leave anybody wiser, and on the face of it, it doesn't make too much sense also.
Absolutely, absolutely.
To tell you the truth.
Sheetal Sharma, we've seen a lot of anger, a lot of angst amongst the public, in the UK as well. They too seem to be upset with how long this is taking. They are concerned that a deal has not been reached. Many of them are saying that probably we did the wrong thing 2 years ago. And that's the sentiment really on the ground. We also saw an unprecedented scene in UK Parliament where a mace was picked up by one of the MPs and, he walked away with it, handed it over to the staff there and then walked out of Parliament. Now, these are some things that are playing themselves up really as far as the UK are concerned with regards to Brexit, and the people generally are upset.
See, people are bound to be upset in such kind of circumstances where uncertainty and unpredictability prevails. The reason is that as we were discussing in the previous section, that the two extreme camps, they are very, married to their sentiment of either going out of the European Union or remaining in the Union. Now, the reason is that the kind of deal which she has come up with is seen as flawed deal, is seen as a compromise deal. It is to large extent reported in British media that she is acting upon or she is parroting what Angela Merkel is saying, and one of the article also calls her a stooge of Angela Merkel, that she is unable to see beyond what she is guiding her. Now, all those things apart, the masses do not understand the dynamics of the economic structuring and restructuring and how much time this is going to take. And a simple example can be, or a term that can be used to explain all this mess post-Brexit would be a shock therapy. Now, how would you suddenly change all your laws which govern your social life, which govern your political life, and how do you relate in industry? What are the, say for example, even the Human Rights Commission, the kind of things that are there existing in social and political setup. So people are bound to get, emotional and express their anger. And what they are expressing they at one point of time had thought that, this kind of a deal would help us to gain our reins back and have sovereignty, decide about our own self, and EU is not going to dictate us. But suddenly they have realized that they could have revisited.
Right.
If you remember, just 3 days after the referendum, there were voices, almost lakhs and 3 million people were saying that, we need to revisit our decision of leaving European Union. But then in the last 2 years, the kind of business that has suffered, the kind of uncertainty that has prevailed, and even in the future for next 5-10 years until things stabilize, this is going to be remaining in so much of, oscillating between this side and that side. So people are bound to express this.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to a point that Neeraj Srivastava was making about, what happens next really if Theresa May loses the vote?
If Theresa May loses the vote, they have to elect another leader. But as the panelists are saying, he is going to inherit the same mess what she is going to leave behind. Now, what will happen? Is he going to redesign the entire deal and present a new deal to the European Union, which European Union is not ready to accept because they have made their mind very clear that this is what we are going to negotiate. Two important things in that negotiation were that there is a dynamic alignment with the kind of things which are already existing in the structure. And another was that there was a regression clause, non-regression clause, that you cannot go beyond or lower down the laws and regulations which have been governing your industry. So they saw a kind of dynamic strategic alignment with the existing laws of the European Union. Now, is he going to revert all those things? If not, then why is he taking so much of pain? He or she, whosoever comes into the power. So what is the point of doing an entire exercise and, sending the entire society, the whole nation through so much of rigmarole?
It seems like it's being done for political gain and nothing else at this point in time as things stand right now.
Interestingly, nobody knows what are they going to gain out of it.
All right. So even if, let's look at another scenario, Sriram Chaulia, and if Theresa May actually wins this vote, but it leaves her weakened, it leaves her in a state where really she can't do much.
Yeah, already, as I said, when the botched snap election happened last year, she was already quite weakened. But as I said, she's there by default. She's like, the fall guy or the fall girl, if you'd like, because nobody else wants to shoulder the blame for the severe descent that the UK is entering after exiting the EU. I think if you look at the economic situation, the British growth has stalled, the unpredictability about investments, a lot of major multinationals have pulled out of the UK because of the fear of losing access to the bigger European market. You look at, anxiety at the grassroots due to the austerity policies that the Conservatives have been implementing for the last several years now. There's a housing crunch, there's debt. So if you look at all that, in a way, if you come down to the bottom, to the baseline, why is this whole tumult and division happening where almost 50% of the society, even now they say if there's a fresh referendum, for example, the opinion polls are saying it's going to be 51-49, it's going to be touch and go, one way or the other. Maybe a few more may want to remain than was the case last time. But whatever it is, it shows complete division of the society between essentially the haves and the have-nots. So in a way, you go down to the British politics, the leadership of last 1 decade since the Labour was defeated in 2010, the almost last 8 to 9 years, you see that what they have done is in the name of austerity and conservative ideology, what they have done is, massively disenfranchise and pauperize large sections of society. You see, there's a UN Human Rights rapporteur on extreme poverty who has visited Britain, and he's actually commenting about extreme poverty in a rich country like that. And that's a lot of it has to do with the austerity. So the pro-Brexit, the sentiment, if it is still there and if it's completely tearing apart that country, I will blame the especially Conservative Party politicians and their attachment to ideology, because that working class, the white working class who feel like they have been left behind and who are behind this right-wing populism, they remain angry, and that is a big threat to Theresa May. Theresa May has tried to position herself as a pragmatist. Okay, I'll try and manage all sections and come up with a compromise solution. I also have to appease the EU to some extent to get a good deal from them. But the problem is the anger is at the grassroots. And in a way, the austerity which Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party, is highlighting and actually is benefiting from it is, I think, going to be the wave of the future, because they will say that, whether there's Brexit or not, the poor remain in a highly disadvantaged position in the current dispensation. And as long as that is there, that groundswell of anger from a lot of people who feel they have been left out of globalization and who are being used to blame the EU, that is, I think, going to drive this process forward, possibly to a new general election, if not on 2021-22, maybe sooner. And I think Labour is, in a way, Corbyn is sitting out this whole storm. He has not taken a clear position, and they may be the likely beneficiary. So we may see the end of an era of right-wing rule as a result of this Brexit mess.
All right. And how is the EU really looking at all of this? Because the EU has taken a very tough stand, Ambassador.
The EU made it clear right in the beginning that if Britain decides to go out, we will look after our own interests. We will guard our own interests, and we will offer a deal to Britain, which safeguards our interest and hopefully offers something to Britain also. So EU is not particularly happy with, in principle, it is not happy with a country like Britain going out. But the fact is that if it is presented with this scenario by a country, it cannot possibly beg Britain to stay inside the EU. So they said, okay, if you want to go out, but then you negotiate the deal with us. These are our bottom lines, which they have spelled out in this thing. They have said during the during the visit of Theresa May to these countries, they have said that we are not going to dramatically change anything which is already negotiated in the deal. We can offer some clarifications, quote unquote. So they are going to stick to their particular guns. But I would like to point out one more thing here.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I think is important, and because it's not just confined to Britain. You remember when this referendum took place, it was seen as kind of a battle between the haves and have-nots, which has been mentioned by the professor. And, as a result of globalization, there is a very large number of people, segment of the population in these developed countries, which feels that it has lost. And the gains from globalization have gone disproportionately to another class of the haves, the people who are already doing well. And this has happened not only in the Britain, Trump winning in the United States. Similar phenomenon. If you look at who voted for Trump and who voted against, Hillary Clinton. What is happening in France now?
Right.
It's the same thing, absolutely. Italy, okay? Not to speak of Greece. The phenomenon of globalization has disproportionately affected different segments of the population.
Society, yeah.
and there are a large number of people, whose quality of life has gone down.
Absolutely right.
And who don't want this thing. So they want something to improve their own quality of life. And that is why they voted in favor of this. This is Brexit.
They're not happy with what's happening, and they're looking for some kind of change, and they're hoping that it will improve their lives going forward, and that's exactly how it's playing out.
The gap between the rich and poorer has become wider.
And that's causing all these
That's
problems.
causing
yeah.
this, so-
All right. I want to, concentrate on Article 50 now of the Lisbon Treaty. Now, it's just a small little document, 5 paragraphs, 250 words, but it's causing a lot of chaos, Sheetal Sharma.
Because it's irrevocable, and if it has been triggered, then you can't stop it once it is in operation. So that is why this has happened almost 2 years back, and now what will happen that the date has come as it is nearing. So they took their good time in order to come out with the deal.
Is there an exit clause? What can that be?
It's only dependent upon 3 things, that it has to be either, it has to be passed by the members of the European Union, parliamentarians, and it has to be majority in the European Union, 27 member states, and also the cabinet here, which is now in flux. So what is very important, we have to see that under what set of circumstances is it extendable. And this is what it has to be negotiated between the EU and the person who is going to...
What happens if time runs out?
Yes.
And there is no deal really?
Yes.
And Brexit will happen. It's time bound at the end of the day. Then what happens in such a situation?
Frank, that would be terrible for UK. The reason is that it is going to influence every aspect of life of every individual in UK. Like what? I'll give you some examples. 1, suddenly your planes will stop. Why? Because you need to have a permission to fly within the airspace of another country, or to land, or to take. There will be complete shutdown of people. Those who have already booked their seats and every vacation has been planned, and all those things would come to standstill, and you have to shut everything after the midnight. Second, what will happen to your driving license, suppose? Now, if you have a driving license that is issued in UK, you can drive in the entire European Union. But now suddenly you need to apply for a permit to drive. Third, if you are traveling to UK, you need to have a passport. So if you are traveling from UK then to Schengen area, you need a passport. But what happens, usually you are given a permission to travel if your passport has 6 months extended period. But what will happen now? The UK people were so far traveling even with 1 day validity left, because there was an internal cooperation agreement. Now what will happen? You have to postpone all your travel plans. Even as small as things like, that if you have a pet passport, your pet can travel with you, but then the pet has to be vaccinated 4 months in advance in order to prove that, okay, you are not going to have any disease. So such kind of things will happen. What will happen?
So basically what you're saying is life as the Britons know it will come to a halt, or will change dramatically.
It will change dramatically, because there's one more thing, like the medicines which are sold. Now the medicines required for cold have a particular kind of chemical and component. Now this particular component cannot be sold freely in UK market because it comes under certain regulations. So what will happen to the medicine sector? Either you need to stockpile, or you'll run out of the medicines in the winter.
Okay,
so these are
wide-ranging and large-scale implications is what you're
True.
suggesting. Closing comments now from all my guests on what does it mean really for India going forward?
Frank, I think we would, have preferred that UK remains part of the European Union. We have no official position on this, but certainly we would have rather liked that our access, because many of our companies are UK based, and from there they used to also access the continental market. We have large investments in the UK, and because of the old colonial and the Commonwealth connections, we will be looking forward willy-nilly to this a new arrangement after Brexit, whenever it happens, maybe March 2019, which is supposedly, if the Article 50, the current date stays, then we are looking at, if the UK remains part of a customs union with the EU, which is likely because of the Northern Ireland problem, the Irish backstop as it's called. If that is the case, then they cannot negotiate free trade agreements with other countries independently yet. And that's one of the reasons why the hardliners are against Theresa May right now and baying for her blood.
Right.
So for us, I think it will be important to look at economic bottom lines. We have a large immigrant community there, and we have to make sure that their rights are protected. Earlier, there used to be like, different status for EU citizens, non-EU citizens, permanent migrants. The UK has been a source of migrants from our country for a long time. So all these things will have to be factored in. Overall, I think the disruption to our businesses is significant, just as, a Canadian or a Brazilian business is facing trouble in the UK, and looking to now access the European market, same will happen to our. So there may be opportunities for other European countries from the continent to woo us. France has been trying to say, you come to us now and we will be the gateway to Europe because the British are now closing. So overall, I think, for us, we are part of the Commonwealth. There's also an issue about Britain and India working together for leadership of the Commonwealth group. So Britain, when it is facing such an existential crisis like this, I think the worst since, the World War II, they will obviously have major implications for our relationship with not just Britain, but with the entire EU, and we'll have to look at alternatives.
Yeah, we do have to look at alternatives, and we've already started that. UK is India's gateway to Europe, but no longer. We've started engaging directly with states in the European Union, Ambassador.
Yes. And we have to also plan for the situation if Britain exits from EU. And then there has been talk of India concluding a free trade agreement with Britain to encourage or to strengthen the economic ties between the two countries. So as of now, India cannot do anything. India is just an observer. It cannot influence the outcome of this whole thing in any way.
But we can look out for our own interests and engage with the others.
Yes, we will. But once the situation becomes clearer, we will try and do the best possible thing. And in fact, this suggestion has come more from the British side now, because they are looking for allies. They have been saying, okay, now we should have a free trade agreement with India, and so on and so forth. So in some senses, they may become softer towards India.
Okay. Right.
But their hands remain tied. Theresa May cannot get full autonomy to negotiate with India or China. So that's the big dilemma.
All right. Quick closing comment from you, Sheetal Sharma, on the way forward, really, as far as this entire issue is concerned.
Brexit or no Brexit, Frank, we'll continue to engage with UK because of the presence of 2.5 million Indian people there. Second, the issue is that if possible, people need or people would like to undo, and scrap everything which has happened since June referendum. That would be the best case scenario. But worst case scenario, that if Theresa May is voted out tonight, it would be a terrible case, and UK really need to think of solutions to deal with this kind of a problem. But in the fitness of things, the best would be that Theresa May continues, she wins the vote, and then she continues with the deal, tries to pacify both the extreme ends, those who want to and those who are not willing to, and then continues with the deal and remains close to EU as much as possible in order to avoid any kind of major trouble coming in UK's way in the next 10 years.
Threading the needle exercise, almost an impossible task. Really, as I said, we have empathy and sympathy for Theresa May, but maybe the game is up.
But some of them are very good at it also. You might not be, but many are. All right, on that note then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.